Love makes me treat you the way that I do. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? There's nothing too good for a girl that's so true. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you? I bought you a fur coat for Christmas, a diamond ring, a Cadillac car, and everything. Love makes me treat you the way that I do. Gee, baby, ain't I good to you?
Greetings, peeps. How is everybody doing? I hope you have had an opportunity to enjoy some of the beautiful weather and that you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. So it's time for our composition project. Now, this is only the introduction to the composition project. It's not due till the end of the semester, okay? So you still have quite a bit of time. Don't worry, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for you to utilize some of the tools you've learned through the course, okay? So don't panic, have fun, okay? That's the biggest deal with this, is I want you to experience it and I want you to have fun. Before we get into that though, let me alert you to a couple of things. First and foremost, I am going to be having surgery the day after tomorrow. That's Wednesday, June 7th. And it's knee replacement surgery. So I'm going to be out of commission for a few days. So if you don't hear from me, if you email me and you don't hear from me as soon as you'd like to, just bear with me, be patient. I will be receiving emails, I will be answering emails, but it may take me a little bit longer as I will be a little bit incapacitated for a few days. Okay? So, a little bit about what you're about to see. These are video presentations that I put together for a different semester, but they contain the same information that you are going to use. So just watch the video. I would recommend you watch it all the way through. It is a little on the lengthy side. I apologize for that, but it is very, very worth it. And it does explain in detail how to do your composition project. It gives you the parameters, for example, but also it gives you some wonderful tools that you can use to complete your projects. Now, there are two different online software packages that I can recommend to you. The first one is called MuseScore. MuseScore. That's, once again, that is MuseScore. And the other one is NoteFlight. Now the major difference between the two is that MuseScore is a software that you download. It's free, but you do download it onto your system. NoteFlight is an all web-based software. They both work well, and they both will allow you to generate PDFs, okay? And that's the main thing about this composition project, is you've got to submit your project to me in the form of a PDF, or if you want to print it out on a printer and then scan it or take a picture of it with your phone and shoot me a JPEG. As long as I can see it, as long as it's legible, that'll be fine. Okay, so here we go. Let's watch this video all the way through and glean everything you can. And of course, remember, you can always go back and watch it a second time. Okay, enjoy, folks, and hopefully I'll see you in a week or so. This video is going to focus on a series of smaller segments that deal with our composition project. Now, understand the project isn't due until the very last day of the semester. That's April 28th. So you've got plenty of time to put this project together. Your rough draft is going to be due the week before on Saturday, April 22nd. That's when I'd like to have you submit your rough draft. It doesn't have to be finished. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I need you to submit it then so that I can have an opportunity to view it, listen to it, play through it, and give you some constructive feedback before you turn in your final project on the 28th. Okay, so hopefully that will put you at ease, but a couple of other things I want you to be aware of. These tools that I'm giving you are going to guide you step by step through the composition process. Okay, so if you are new to music and you've never composed before, put your mind at ease. You're going to do just fine with this. It's not going to be a big deal, I promise. The bottom line for all of this, again, is have fun with it. Okay, don't try to make this into something that, complex or wildly imaginative. If you do, it's great, but I just want you to understand I am not expecting perfection here. I just want you to have the experience of composing. That's the main idea behind this project. It's applying the things that you are learning from our online text into an actual musical setting. If you are already a musician and you've been composing, this is going to be a piece of cake. If you've never composed a piece of music before, well, here you go. Here's your opportunity, and you can just have fun with it. Don't worry about whether or not it is a Grammy award-winning composition. If it is, well, let me know. I get 10%. Okay, so you are going to have some options with respect to how you compose your melody, but you must use some type of software. I can't accept anything handwritten because we're not a face-to-face class, right? We are virtual online. So get your hands on some software. Now I'm going to have links posted for you. I have links posted for you on our e-learning site as to direct links to the software packages that you can use. But understand that when you present or submit your final project, that it has to be done so in one of a couple of ways, either through a PDF format or through a picture format such as a JPEG or a GIF file. So don't allow yourself to get bogged down into too much technicality. This is why I offer these selections for you, these choices for you. But if you happen to choose something else, again, as long as it will generate the notes for you and the staves for you and so forth, that's fine. But you've got to be able to submit it to me in a readable format, and that's why I say PDF or a GIF file or some other type of picture file will work just fine. Okay, so some suggested softwares for you to use. Primarily, there are 3 of them. Excuse me. Finale is one, and MuseScore is another one, and NoteFlight. All 3 of these software packages are ones that you can use. The latter 2, NoteFlight and MuseScore, are free to download. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. If you don't have to spend any money at all if you don't want to. Finale is a rather pricey software, even with a student discount. It's still up there. It's very good. But don't feel obligated to go out and buy, a $200 software package just for this project. It's not necessary. Now, if you really get into composing and you determine that, wow, I'm really enjoying this and I really want to do more of it, you're going to appreciate software packages like Finale. So, explore it if you want to. There might be a free trial version you can use, and if you want to go that route, that's entirely up to you. MuseScore and NoteFlight are a little bit more user-friendly. Again, they are free. The difference between the two is that MuseScore is an actual software package that you download and install on your own system. NoteFlight is all web-based. Again, they both work, quite well. There are some subtle differences between how the two of them work. I will be giving you some instructions utilizing MuseScore, so just be aware that there are some differences. If you decide to go with Noteflight, there's some very subtle differences. My advice is play around with them, get to know them, and experiment with them, right? And you might even find that through your playing around and experimenting, you'll be able to to compose rather quickly. So these next segments are going to be presented to you in 3 parts. Part A is an introduction to the project and the parameters of the project. So also along with examples of how melodies are put together. Part B introduces a compositional technique involving the use of motives and gives you examples of how composers use motives to create, large compositions. Part C outlines the compositional process of using a combination of motives and something called aleatory or chance music, and you actually do this through a use of the deck of ordinary playing cards, so it's kind of fun. So all of these items are suggestions, okay? Understand you don't have to use these suggestions. If you want to compose your melody on your own and you've got a song idea already going, absolutely, you're welcome to use that. You're not required to use these methods that I present to you, but they can help you and they can make things a lot easier for you, especially if you are new to writing music or you're just new to music in general, okay? So these are just tools I'm offering to give you a little bit of a leg up and to understand the concepts a little bit better. The bottom line, enjoy yourself, okay? Don't try to make this into something that is just wildly complex, okay? It doesn't have to be. Have fun with it. Don't worry if your melody isn't perfect to your ears, okay? Some of the world's greatest compositions have begun as mistakes or simply as, and more importantly, as just composers playing around with ideas. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to have fun. Don't be afraid to experiment. I think you're going to really enjoy the benefits and the outcome of your compositional project. And as always, if you have questions or you need additional help, please send me an email. Okay, so watch these segments, these part A, B, and C, and get to it. Enjoy yourselves. Okay, we'll see you soon. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin by talking about the composition project from the standpoint of parameters. In other words, the things that you need to have in order to make this work. You must have 8 measures. Your composition must be 8 measures in length. Now, if you're really ambitious and you're planning on writing a symphony and you're going to write 430 measures or 430,000 measures, knock yourself out. That's great. However, you are only going to be graded on 8 measures. So my advice to you is keep things simple. You may compose in any key but C major. The reasons for this will become evident as we go along. You may write in a major or minor mode, and you may use any note or rest value up to that of a 16th. Now, these are all things that are necessary for your composition. These must be present. You got to have notes or rest. You got to write in a major or minor mode. You may write in any key but C major, and you got to have 8 measures to your composition. Now, the rest of these are things that you can have if you want them. You may use dynamic markings if you want. What are those? Well, crescendos, decrescendos, forte, piano, that type of thing. If you want them, absolutely, you are welcome to put them in. You may use tempo markings if you want them. Again, these are things that you don't have to have. You may use them if you wish. And you may use phrase and articulation markings if you want. Now, if you don't know what any of these things are, please don't stress out about it. Again, these are things that you can use if you want. If you want to learn more about them, get in touch with me and I will point you in the right direction.
So, what do we do with respect to understanding how to compose? What are some of the tools we can use in order to make this happen? Well, the first step is understanding analysis, understanding music composition. Understanding what analysis is, breaking things down into their smaller component parts, and then taking a look at each of these things and how they all fit together to make a whole. Well, one of the things we can do for this is to look at something that is very familiar. So we're going to take a melody. This is a very simple, yet very famous melody. And we're going to break it down. We're going to analyze it. And you might notice a couple of things right off the bat. You might notice the treble clef sign. You might also notice the time signature symbol there. And you might also notice that there are 8 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exactly the same number of measures that you need to compose your composition. Now, you may be able to tell what this melody is just by looking at it, just by looking at the notes and following their direction. And this is part of analysis, just simply scanning through the notes and just looking at what's there, where do they go tonally, are there a bunch of skips and leaps, or are they stepwise in motion? So these are all items that are clues to how this composition was composed and how it was put together. So while you might be able to determine what composition this is just by looking at it, a clear way of figuring it out is simply to listen to it. So let's give it a listen. So you've probably been able to tell that this is indeed the tune "Mary Had a Little Lamb." Not too difficult to get that, okay? But it's kind of important for us to understand how to analyze a familiar melody. So what do we need for our composition? Well, one of the things we're going to have is the staff. Staffs or staves. You're probably going to need 2 of them, but before we go any further, let me mention that your software that you use, your notation or composition software that you use, will generate these automatically for you. So you don't need to go out and buy any staff paper, or you don't need to worry about anything like that. It's all going to be done for you automatically. But for purposes of demonstration, here are 2 staves that are blank. And then you're going to have to indicate somewhere in your music where tonally your melody is going to take place. Is it going to be high? Is it going to be low? Is it going to be medium? Are you writing for, treble voices, really high voices? Or are you writing for piccolos? Are you writing for tubas? So in order for us to delineate where musically or tonally our melody is going to happen, we need something to show us where, and that's where we use something called clef symbols. Now, primarily what we've been exposed to are treble and bass clef symbols, or enough, or other. Another one that we have seen is the movable clef, which sometimes is referred to as the alto clef or the tenor clef or so forth. You don't need to worry about that. I advise you keep things simple. Limit yourself to use of the treble clef or the bass clef. You may write in either. If you want to use the bass clef, that's perfectly fine. For purposes of this demonstration, I am going to use the treble clef. Okay, so again, if you want to write in the bass clef, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy for you to do that. Now, something else that we're going to have is rhythm. And we're going to have a way of organizing that rhythm so that it is understandable by whoever plays it, sings it, what have you. And one of the ways we do that is through the use of this symbol, which is called a time signature. Now, we've already been talking about this type of rhythmic tool in our text, online text, but I want us to understand its purpose within our composition. The time signature tells us a couple of things. The top number tells us the number of beats there are within a measure, and again, we're going to find out what a measure is momentarily. And the bottom number tells us what type of beat that is, okay? And in this case, 4/4, there'd be 4 beats per measure, and the beats are quarter beats, so 4 quarter beats per measure. Now, what is a measure? Well, let's find out. Here we have these vertical lines that sort of bisect the staff, kind of like a ruler is divided into inches. Well, bar lines divide music into measures. So in other words, these bar lines give us these indications of where the measures are, or what the measures are. The space between the bar lines is the measure. So, and then most music has a final bar line, which is called the final bar or the double bar at the end. So there you go. Those are bar lines. Once again, let's take a look at those. There they are, all bar lines, and then the yellow arrows indicating where they are, and then, of course, the final double bar. Now that we have the bar lines in place, we can begin to understand what a measure is. Measure happens between the bar lines. Here are 3 measures outlined for you, just showing you what they are. We can put the numbers in there if we want, 1, 2, 3. Now you might be curious to know as to why this number 5 is present. Well, guess what? If this is 4th measure, what measure would this be? Number 5, absolutely. So the software that I used to generate these staves put that number in there automatically, and your software may do the same. Okay, so there we have our measures. Now let's return back to our melody of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and let's do a little bit of further analysis. In fact, let's take a look at it from the standpoint of where these pitches come from. And they come from the C major scale. Okay, so every single one of these notes in this melody, Mary Had a Little Lamb, comes from this major scale down here. Now, you may have already figured out that it's not, the melody does not contain every single pitch. It only contains a certain number of these pitches. And in fact, it only needs a few of them. It doesn't need all of them. So that's something to consider when you are composing, and I'm going to give you some tools to do this. You're not going to need to use all 8 tones of a major scale. You can get around using very few notes from a major scale. In the case of this particular melody, in fact, it only uses these 4 pitches. That's all there is. So if we listen to this melody and we see these pitches going by, okay, so you notice that it only used those 4 pitches. Now, let's do the same thing. Let's listen to this melody again. So let's watch and play this melody again and watch these notes get highlighted as the melody is playing. The notes that are being utilized from the C major scale are going to show up being outlined in red circles. So let's see what happens. so we can see again that we have only used C, D, E, and G. We've completely omitted F. We didn't need it, and the A and the B and the C from the C major scale. So yeah, it's kind of cool how you can use only a few notes from an entire major scale and yet make an entire melody. Now let's play the melody again. This time, watch the direction of the notes as they go by. So this demonstration is just simply showing you that all melody has direction and it has shape. If you take the notes away and you just leave the directional lines, you can see that it's not just all straight lines, that there are peaks and valleys, if you will, or angles going down and angles going up. All melody has this. All melody has some type of shape, some type of contour, in other words. Okay, so let's review things that you're going to need in order to compose. You're going to need empty staffs or staves. Again, those are going to be generated by your software. You're going to need the treble or bass clef sign to delineate the pitch or the register, the highs and the lows. You're going to need a key signature. Remember, any key but C major or A minor. You're going to need a time signature. And again, this tells you all of the above components can be generated from your music notation software, and most likely will be. The parameters, again, 8 measures. You can write in any key but C major or A minor. Any note or rest value up to that of a 16th. Again, all of these limitations are for simplification purposes. You just want to keep things simple. You don't need to have things too complex. Any time or meter signature that you wish, but I again would urge you to keep that simple. And as I state above, most of the components such as staffs or staves, the clef signs, key signatures, and the time signatures are automatically generated by the software you use based upon the parameters that you set. Things like bar lines and measures will be automatically generated based upon your choice of time signature and the notes and rest values that you enter. Okay, folks, so that kind of concludes this part to our project. Stay tuned for part B. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is part B of the instructional vids for our composition project. And this one deals directly with constructing a melody. Now, there's several different ways that you can construct a melody, and we can substitute the word constructing with composing, but there are lyric-based melodies or compositions. There are aleatory or chance music compositions. There are motive-based melodic ideas. And so let's talk about the last one, because the motive-based in conjunction with or combination with the aleatory is kind of what we're going to use to make our composition. That's one idea we can use. A motive is simply a short, melodic, rhythmic, usually both, musical idea. It can be rhythmic, it can be tonal, or it can be a combination, and most of the time it is a combination. Now, there's also a word called motif or motif. You may have experienced motifs already. If you go into a building or maybe into somebody's home, you might have noticed that they have a certain repetitive motif. They might like, for example, early American furniture, or they might like modern furniture. And so the motif throughout their home or the motif throughout the building you're in might be that of early American or modern. Well, in music, it's much the same way. A motif is a thematic representation of a concept or an idea, such as a character or emotion. So in music, you could have a love motif, or you could have a horror motif. Think about it that way too. Film scores that you've listened to from cinema, from movies, uh, you will recognize certain motifs in there. There's even motifs written that represent a character that you'll hear that again and again. So if you think of the great composer John Williams, think about all the Star Wars films you've seen. You recognize certain motives when they come out. Leia's motive, Princess Leia, or the Darth Vader's motive comes out. So anyway, motifs or motifs, those are something that you can work on at your leisure sometime else. You don't need a motif for your composition, but you do need a motive, a short, melodic, rhythmic idea. So let's talk about motives. Giant works from small ideas, and we can learn this from a guy named Ludwig van Beethoven. He was the master of motivic ideas. He used, very small motive ideas and just got tons and tons of mileage out of them. His Symphony Number 5, for example, is a prime example of this. Let's listen to this. Notice how you've got a 4-note, 1, 2, 3, 4 motivic idea stated once, and then here it's stated again, just tonally lower. Let's listen to this. So again, he's just taking the 4-note idea and repeating it, right? Well, you can do the same thing with your own composition. And by the way, these two motivic ideas come from the C minor scale. And there we see the pitches to the C minor scale. And in fact, he has only used throughout his symphony, throughout the first portion of his symphony, he only uses these 4 notes from the C minor scale. Let's have a look at that. Here is the score to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, at least the first few measures. Let's listen to this. Let's listen to this and see if we can pick out where the motives are. Okay, so we can tell that Beethoven has reused or recycled this motivic idea again and again and again. We can see it in its opening statement. Here it is stated once. Here it is stated again. And then he divides it among the instruments. The first and second violins and violas all restate it. Then he takes that motivic idea and he sort of adapts it and flips it over, flips it upside down, using a process known as inversion. And then he brings it back around to finally close us out. So let's watch the music go by again and watch the motives play. Can see he really got a lot of mileage out of the 4-note idea, just 4 simple notes. So this is something that you can employ in your own composition, just taking a simple little motivic idea and reusing it. Okay, so that concludes this this idea of looking at motives, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize what I give you in the next segment for constructing a motive. Okay, folks, so welcome to part C of our series on our composition project. This is going to involve constructing a melody using a motive. Now, again, I urge you to consider the word constructing the words constructing and composing the same. Okay, so you're composing here. The items that you're going to need for this exercise: a deck of playing cards, just an ordinary deck of playing cards. Notation software such as NoteFlight, Finale, or MuseScore. Any notation software will do. You're going to need an open mind and a little imagination. Okay, so what do? Step one, you want to choose a key signature. Keep it simple. My advice to you is always going to be simple is best. Remember that you cannot compose, in C major. It is off limits. We're going to talk about why, but let me just give you a brief explanation. The key of C major contains no accidentals. So when you look at a key signature, remember Mary Had a Little Lamb in part A. No flats or sharps. I want you to have the ability to utilize flats and sharps and understand how they work within specific major scales. But keep it simple. You don't need to write a composition in 7 sharps. I mean, it's just not necessary. If you want to do that, that's entirely up to you. You do you. But for our purposes, just keep it simple. The key of G major, for example, has only 1 sharp. The key of D major, 2 sharps. The key of F major, 1 flat. The key of B flat major, 2 flats. Stick with these. You don't have to go overboard on key signatures. Now, the second step would be to take the suit of diamonds in your deck of playing cards and remove the ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So take the suit of diamonds and get out those cards: ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is going to become your pitch pile. This is where you're going to determine what the pitches are going to be from for your first motivic idea. Okay, so here we go. Let's find out what's going to happen. Now, when we begin to utilize playing cards, this is chance, right? This is aleatory. We are not choosing a melody or a motivic idea based upon something we construct out of our head. We're doing it through chance. And the only reason to do this, folks, is if you don't have an idea, or you don't you're nervous or apprehensive about experimenting with figuring out what that motivic idea might be. You just need a place to start. It could be you just need your first pitch, and from there you're home free. So utilize this to your advantage. You do not have to adhere to these aleatory rules, this deck of card rule, strictly. You can play around with this. I encourage you to be creative with it. But here we go. We have the ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We have made a determination about our key signature. I am deciding here that we're going to write in the key of D major. And the key of D major has 2 sharps in it, F sharp and C sharp. So our pitches, therefore, are going to be D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. Now you might be asking, okay, a scale has 8 pitches. I see 8 notes there, and yes, indeed you do. But understand that the first and last notes of any scale are repeated, right? They're both Ds. So there's no need to have an 8th card unless you just want to. If you want to go that far with this, by all means, go ahead. But understand what we're doing here. We are going to be randomly taking cards and using the cards we draw as pitches. So let's say we shuffle all these up and we draw one. Let's say we draw the 5 of diamonds. That means that the first note in our motive is going to be an A, okay? So that's how simple this is. The next thing we have to do is make a determination about what the rhythm will be, and for that we need a set of durational cards. So I'm going to use the suit of spades. So take the suit of spades and remove all but the 2, 4, and 8. So you're only going to need 3 cards. Unless you want to keep the ace, you may if you wish. So you're going to end up with these 3 cards: 2, 4, and 8. Okay? Now, what do we do with those? Well, we're going to make them rhythmic durational values. The 2 of spades becomes a half note. That represents a half note. Now, you're going to understand why this is if you look at a time signature. In a time signature, the top number tells us the number of beats, the bottom number tells us what kind they are. So if you were to see a time signature that said 2, 2, and by the way, that's a very common time signature, that's telling you that there are 2 beats in each measure, and each of those beats is a half note. So in music speak, this number 2 represents a half note. A 4 represents a quarter note. And an 8 represents an eighth note. So there you go. You have durational values. Now, if you wanted to keep that ace of spades, you could make that ace of spades a 16th if you want to continue on with this. It's entirely up to you. We don't have a deck of cards or a playing card that is, represents the number 16. So you'd have to sort of make that up. Now you might be thinking, well, what about rests? Well, you could take the same idea and flip it around. Just use another suit. Take the suit of hearts, for example, or the suit of clubs. And you could do the same thing with those. You could make the durational value cards as well, but they would just simply represent rests rather than notes. And then if you were to shuffle all those together and you pick them out at random, well, you kind of get the idea. This is how you would be constructing, just simply using a random deck, random cards from an ordinary deck of playing cards. All right, so I hope this gives you a little bit of a demonstration of how to construct a motivic idea. Next, we're going to be looking at actually putting these notes in using our composition software. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at what's going on with our composition project. This section deals with constructing the melody and constructing the melody using motives which you create. So to start with, we're looking at the software package known as MuseScore. Now, I recommend, if you have the means, download MuseScore version 4. As you can see up here at the top of the screen. The previous versions are fine, they do well, but I think version 4 is the best, and I think it's the most user-friendly version that they have. So I encourage you to download MuseScore 4. Now, when you do open the package, this is the screen you are going to see. So you can see here you've got some choices right at the beginning, and the first thing you want to do would be to open a new score. So go ahead and hit that plus sign. Now you have some choices here. You can go with a choral score, chamber music score, solo, jazz, pop, all of these. If you want to play around with it, by all means go through all of these and just check them out. It's kind of cool. But I recommend just starting with the general score. It's going to be the simplest, and remember, simple is best. Keep it simple. Make it easy on yourself, okay? And then you see over here the template side of the menu gives you some choices: treble clef or bass clef or the grand staff. Remember, you're writing a simple melody. It does not need to be involved. You do not need an accompaniment. So truthfully, the grand staff is not necessary. Now, if you want to go that route on your own, by all means, knock yourself out. But for our purposes and for the purposes of this project and a grade for this project, you only need a melody. Now, that melody can be written in either the treble clef or the bass clef. So you decide whichever you'd prefer to write your melody in. I'm going to choose the treble clef for purposes of this demonstration. Okay, then we click next. Now we have another screen which gives us some more choices. You can see key signature, time signature, tempo, and measures. So all of these parameters that you can set
for your composition project. So let's click on key signature, and you see here it gives us several choices of all the key signatures available. Again, I say unto thee, yea, verily, keep it simple. 1 to 2 accidentals is all you really need in your key signature. I would make it a minimum of 1 accidental. Remember, you cannot compose your composition in the key of C major or A minor. You must use at least 1 accident, but no more than 3 accidentals would be best. So let's, for purposes of demonstration, I am using the key signature of D major. So let's go up here now to our time signature. Again, I just simply say keep it simple. I'm going to go with a simple 4/4 time signature. I recommend you stick with 4/4 or 3/4. If you want to go into complex or compound time signatures, that's your business. But remember, simple is going to be easier for you. Now you see here 2 other time signature symbols. If you're a musician, you should be quite familiar with these. The one up here this is known as the common time time signature, and really all that is 4/4, what this is. And then there's cut time signature, which looks like a cent sign, and that is actually a 2/4 time signature, or some variant of duple meter. So, you know, folks, again, I urge you, keep it simple on yourself, make it easy on yourself. Just go with 4/4. If you want to do something complex, that's up to you. Okay, and then let's choose a tempo. If you wish, you do not have to do this, but I'm going to do so for a couple of reasons. Number one, for purposes of playing back my composition so that I can hear it. 120 is a little bit fast, so I'm going to slow it down. So in order to do that, I have to check this box here, show tempo marking on my score, and I'm going to slow things down to about 86, which will enable me to be able to hear this a little bit better if it's slowed down a little bit. And then, excuse me, clicking on the number of measures. The default is 32. I don't need 32 measures, so I'm going to change that to 8. By the way, you can scroll using these arrows if you wish, okay? And then let's go down to our title. You do want to put in some kind of title, so I'm just going to call this my masterpiece. You can call yours anything you want. You should put your name in the composer window, so do go ahead and do that. You don't need a subtitle, you don't need a lyricist, and you don't need a copyright, but if you want to put all of those in there, you are welcome to. Okay, once you have all of these parameters set, click done, and lo and behold, there is your blank score ready for you to input notes. All right, now inputting notes in MuseScore is actually quite simple. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. One way is to use your computer keyboard. Perhaps the most efficient way is simply to use your mouse. And then another way you can do is to use a MIDI keyboard if you have one. Now, if you have a MIDI keyboard, you're going to need to let MuseScore recognize it. And in order for you to do that, you're going to need to go up to the Edit tab and then click on Preferences. And then when this comes up, you're going to go down to I/O. This is Input Output. And then your audio devices should already be there. System default is fine. If you want to change it to something else that you use in your with your system, I happen to use a Focusrite audio interface, so I'm gonna click on that. Buffer size, I'm going to let you decide that for yourself. The default should be fine. And then your MIDI input, in other words, what your keyboard
music keyboard, MIDI keyboard is my keyboard here that I'm using in my studio happens to be a Yamaha MM8. So it has already recognized that. And then the output, I'm going to use my MIDI interface, my audio interface, my Focusrite for that. So that is, again, entirely up to you folks. If you wish to utilize a MIDI keyboard, you may, or you can simply utilize the mouse pad, or excuse me, your mouse or your keyboard. Okay, for us to start writing, we need to click on this little pencil icon up here in the upper left hand corner, and you'll notice that it highlights the first beat of this measure, and you will also notice that it has highlighted the quarter note, and it has highlighted or enables me to put in notes in this first beat region if you move your mouse up and down. Now, to start with, I'm going to use the MIDI keyboard to input notes for right now. I'll show you some other methods that you can use, but for now I'm going to use my MIDI keyboard here in my studio. The first thing we're going to do is to construct a motive, and we're going to be using that aleatory method that we discussed using our deck of cards, the diamonds for our pitch pile and the spades for our durational pile. So let's start. We'll choose a card, drawing from our pitch pile, and we pick out the 3 of diamonds. There it is, the 3 of diamonds. Now let's put up our scale, our D major scale, and we'll note that the 3, the 3rd degree of the scale, is F sharp. So our first note is going to be an F sharp. Now, the durational value, the spades pile, we'll go ahead and pull out there and look what we've got. We've got the 4 of spades, and 4 in music speak represents a quarter note. So our first note is going to be an F sharp, and that's going to give us a quarter note with the spade durational pile. So our first note, F sharp, and it's going to be a quarter note. So here we go. There we go. Now I just inputted that using my MIDI keyboard. Let's go on to our next note, and we're going to go back to our pitch pile, and we pull out another card, and here we go. This happens to be the 5 of diamonds, the 5 of diamonds. If we look at our scale, we see that the 5th degree of this scale is A. So now we go over to our durational pile once more, pull out another card after we've mixed them up a little bit, and look what we get. We get an 8th note. Okay, well, we're going to use an 8th note then, and we are going to play an A 8th note, or put in an A 8th note. Now at this point I can make some choices here, just sort of thinking ahead, ladies and gentlemen. But before we do this, let's just understand a couple of things. You can use your arrow keys, and we can play this just by playing the arrow keys back and forth to see what this sort of sounds like. And we want to get to this space right here and put in our next note. Now, something you should probably tell yourself to do at this stage, if you happen to draw the 8 of spades or an 8th note for the downbeat of a beat, in this case this is a quarter beat, and you should probably go ahead and fill that next note in as also an 8. That just simply completes the quarter beat, rather than to put in a longer durational value or even a shorter durational value. Keep it simple, folks. Make it easy on yourself. So just complete that beat with another 8th note. Now we can go back to our pitch pile. Let's pull out another diamond card, and hey, we get the number 4, which gives us, according to our scale, the 4th degree is a G. So our next note is a G, and we have already determined it's going to be an 8th note. So there is our 3-note motive. There we go. Let's go back and listen to that. Coming up here and clicking on this left arrow and getting back to the beginning. And there's our little melody there. Let's do that again. Okay, so a couple of things that we can do here. We could just continue to pull out cards till our heart's delight, or we can recycle material, which is what all composers, all great composers have done. So what we're going to do is take this melodic idea, this motive, this 3-note motive that we have created, and we're going to copy it. Now what I did was just click in an empty space in the measure, and you noted that this has highlighted the entire measure. Hold down your shift key so that you're only highlighting the notes that you want, and then Control C gives you the ability to copy, and then click on the other area. You don't want that box, so just click on the rest there that you see, this half rest, then hit Control V, and look what happens. Now we have the same motivic idea repeated, and we can listen to that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't really, it's not going to win any awards, I would say, but nevertheless, there it is. But let's say we don't want to be that predictable. Let's say all we want to do is take this idea, this 3-note motive that we just entered, and all I did was highlight that note, hold down my shift key, and arrow right until I've selected those 3 pitches. And I'm just going to bring those down 1 step. Now watch what happens when I hit the arrow down key. It's moved everything down a half step. I want to move it down a whole step. So 1 more note. There we go. Now a couple of things have happened. It has indicated that this F is natural. It's doing that because it moved all 3 notes down the same amount. We want that to stay an F sharp. So I highlight that note head, I arrow up 1, and it goes back to an F sharp. Okay, let's listen to that now. Let's go back to our back key there, and not bad at all. Now, let's copy that, and let's move that over to the next measure. And there's nothing wrong with repeating things. Remember, composers do it all the time. Bach did it. Beethoven did it. Okay, so again, you can say to yourself, well, I don't really want it to be that predictable. So I'm going to continue on this idea of restating the motivic material lower each time by 1 step. I started on F sharp, went up to A, down to G, then I went to E, went up to G, down to F sharp. Notice how it's the same intervallic motion. It's the same motivic idea. It's just stated down a step lower each time. So I'm going to take this and move it down even further. I want it to start now on D natural. We started on F sharp, we went down to E, now we're down to D natural. Notice again how it has moved things using accidentals. We don't want those. Let's change those back. Just highlight the note head, arrow up. Again, highlight the note head. We don't want an E flat, we want an E natural, so just arrow up. C natural, nope, we want a C sharp, which is in the key signature, arrow up. And again, this E flat needs to be an E natural. Okay, so there we go. Let's listen to this now from the beginning. Okay, so we have
a motivic based melody, and we have completed 2 measures. Only 6 more measures to go. Okay, so we could do a couple of things here. We could take these 2 measures and we could copy them and paste them into these 2 empty measures here, giving us a 4-measure phrase. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's paste them there. I'm highlighting this half rest here. Okay, now let's hear what this sounds like. Okay, again, not going to win any Grammys, but it is what it is. Now, it's perfectly acceptable this way. So if you decide to do something like this, you're home free. You've got 4 measures written, and all you have left is 4 measures to go. But let's say you want to experiment and do something a little different. So I'm going to hit Control Z and undo what I just did. So I'm going to use a compositional technique known as motivic inversion. And this is where I'm going to take the motivic idea, like this first idea right here, and I'm going to invert it or flip it upside down. Now, how do I go about doing that? Well, in a couple of ways. Let's start with the rhythmic idea. We started with a quarter note and then went to 2 eighth notes. Well, what if we started with 2 eighth notes and moved to a quarter note? That would work out just fine. So for this set of the example, I'm going to use the mouse to input the notation, and I got to again highlight that little pencil tool up there. But instead of going to the quarter note first, I'm going to go to the eighth note. I'm going to start on the F sharp, and then I'm going to go up to a G. Notice how the eighth note pattern descends each time. This time I'm going to make it go up. Now, nothing wrong with that. And then I can take the idea of moving up from the first idea or first note a third and change it to moving down a third. So let's start that, and we're going to go to a quarter note because we have our 2 eighths to start. So there's our note, our next motivic idea, our next motive, 3-note motive. We've just simply inverted the original idea. Okay, and let's put in a second one and complete this measure. So we started on F sharp. Let's continue this idea of, instead of going down whole steps, right? F sharp, E, D, and C sharp. Let's continue up. So the next note, we started on F sharp. The next note would be a G natural. And let's get the 8th note up there. And we're going to go up. And we're going to go down to down the 3rd here. Whoops. One great thing that Control Z gets you. You can also, by the way, hit the backspace key, and that will do the same thing. Okay, so let's hear what this sounds like so far. Okay, nothing wrong with that. So how about we take this idea of the inverted motives, and we'll copy it, and we will highlight the next measure and insert them there. But again, continuing on with this idea of moving up by steps, let's move these notes all the way up. So something else that we're looking at here is the fact that this note here, this A natural, actually simply needs to, or excuse me, A sharp, needs to be moved up to a B natural. Okay, everything else is fine in that motivic idea. This needs to be a B natural, and this needs to be a C sharp,
So that should give us what we're looking for. Let's listen to it. Okay, so not bad at all. Nice little melody. And we are 4 measures into our composition. We only have 4 measures left to go. We could simply repeat these 4 measures and call it good if we wanted to. But I'd like you to experiment a little bit, or I would like to experiment a little bit. And let's continue on with this motivic manipulation. We're going to now, instead of inverting, we're going to do something called augmentation, where we're going to take the melody, the motivic idea, and we're going to augment it. We're going to change it. We're going to make it bigger, in other words. Well, we could do this a couple of different ways. We could augment it tonally by stretching out the pitches, making the intervals wider, things like that. But I've decided to instead make the intervals, the rhythms, longer. Instead of using eighth notes and quarter notes, why not use quarter notes and half notes to accomplish our motivic augmentation? So we've gone from quarter to eighths and from eighths to quarter. Let's go, so in other words, long, short, short, and then to short, short, long. Let's now reverse that back to longs and shorts. So we'll start with a half note and go to 2 quarter notes in this motivic augmentation. So let's go up here and select a half note. And we've highlighted a half note. And so what we're going to do is do half note and 2 quarters. So we ended on this A natural at the end of the measure, of this 4th measure. Let's just listen to our idea again. Okay, a little bit of lag time there with my MIDI interface or audio interface. We'll see if we can't correct that in future versions. But now what we're going to do is have a half note followed by 2 quarters. Now, where do we place our half note? Well, this is where we could go back to our pitch pile and select another diamond to give us our pitch if we wanted to, or if we just simply have an idea in our head where this can go tonally. We started on F sharp and moved down to C sharp. Then we started on F sharp again and we moved up tonally to B natural. I'm going to start on C sharp this time with a C sharp half note and the C sharp in the 3rd space on the staff. And then I'm going to follow this idea of moving instead of following the pattern of what I had done before, where I moved up a 3rd and then down a step. I'm going to just go down steps all the way. And then let's try going with a half note on the next measure and moving down, and then down to a half note F sharp. And then I'm going to bring this home. Actually, let's change that. One of the great things about using software is you can change things around. I'd like to bring this back to the keynote of our composition, in other words, the tonal center, which is D. So why not just make these next 2 notes leading down to that? And then we'll end with a whole note. How about that? Let's listen to our composition such as it is.
Okay, so not a bad composition. Again, it may not win us any Emmys, but hey, you never know what's going to happen with the compositions you roll out. So this is for your benefit, to show you, to demonstrate to you how MuseScore works. It's an easy software to use. Again, I highly recommend that you download version 4 and just play around with it, folks. Experiment with it and have fun with it. Don't get bogged down in minutia. Remember, you're only asked to write a simple melody, and you're only asked to write 8 measures. The reason I am throwing in this idea of motivic construction is simply to make it easier on you, and then to make it further easier if you're having difficulty getting started, you could use that idea of using the playing cards. Okay, I hope this works out for you. If you have questions, as always, please get in touch with me. I'm a sentimental sap, that's all. What's the use of trying not to fall? I have no will, you've made your kill, 'cause you took advantage of me. I'm just like an apple on a bough, and you're gonna shake me down somehow. So what's the use? You've cooked my goose, 'cause you took advantage of me. I'm so hot and bothered that I don't know my elbow from my ear. I suffer